Oakland, California, a city known for its rich cultural legacy, deep political roots, and vibrant music scene, has also been shaped by a complex and turbulent history with drugs and street-level trafficking. From the 1970s onward, as the city grappled with deindustrialization, economic decline, and systemic inequality, the drug trade emerged as both a survival mechanism for some and a destructive force for many communities. Entrepreneurs in the underground economy, often young men from neglected neighborhoods, turned to dealing heroin, cocaine, and later crack as a fast track to money and influence. By the 1980s, Oakland had become a critical node in the West Coast's narcotics pipeline, attracting major suppliers and fostering homegrown figures who rose to notoriety. These dealers were not merely criminals in the traditional sense. Many operated with a mix of street savvy, business acumen, and community ties, funding neighborhood events even as their trade fueled violence and addiction. Law enforcement crackdowns, gang rivalries, and federal prosecutions in the 1990s reshaped the landscape, but the legacy of those decades remains deeply embedded in Oakland's identity. The story of the city's drug dealers is one of ambition, power, survival, and the heavy price that comes with it. The life and rise of Anthony "Ant" Flowers, one of Oakland's most notorious drug figures during the late 1980s and early 1990s. In the heart of East Oakland's Elmhurst neighborhood, a young dealer named Anthony "Ant" Flowers quietly began carving out a dangerous legacy. His early hustle, just another street corner operation, would evolve into a formidable force in the Bay Area crack epidemic. Behold the rise of a man who embodied both the allure and destruction of street power. By the late 1980s, with his brute resolve and street-smart savvy, Flowers had positioned himself as a major player. Indeed, one of Oakland's biggest crack cocaine dealers. His rivalry with Timothy "Black Blewett," the successor to Daryl Reed's drug enterprise, ignited a brutal and bloody turf war. That contest sparked the so-called Second Oakland Drug War. The spark ignited at what seemed like an ordinary summer gathering, a barbecue at Diamond Park in 1989. A confrontation between Flowers and Eric "Squeeze" Smith, Blewett's enforcer, escalated quickly into violence. Humiliation turned ambition into open war. Across the streets of East Oakland, chaos followed. Gun battles erupted, drive-by shootings rattled neighborhoods, and innocent people were caught in the crossfire. Religious shrines and funeral homes became targets. One chilling attack saw a funeral home sprayed with automatic weapons during services for 2 murdered associates. By 1991, the death toll had mounted. 16 lives were lost, including an innocent motorist, Patricia Welch, killed during a police chase sparked by gang violence, and Theodore Collins, a former associate turned informant, executed in front of his own home. Flowers was no stranger to arrests. In 1988, police raided multiple locations tied to him, seizing 20 kilos of cocaine, over $250,000, and an arsenal of assault rifles. Yet prosecuting him proved elusive. The case unraveled due to a flawed affidavit and police misconduct. In December of that same year, agents caught him at the Southland Mall with automatic weapons and bulletproof vests, paramilitary gear ready for war. Still, charges failed to stick. By 1993, federal investigators had placed Flowers under tight surveillance, including wiretaps. A routine traffic stop in San Leandro, in which over $14,000 in cash was found, provided the final thread. In late 1996, Flowers was convicted by a federal jury on multiple charges: drug trafficking, conspiracy, and even cell phone fraud linked to coordinating the operation. When his sentence was handed down in February 1999, accompanied by the presence of then Oakland Mayor Jerry Brown, Flowers received 28 years in federal prison. Prosecutors had sought 30, insisting he'd been the kingpin behind the violence ravaging East Oakland. The judge, however, stopped short of labeling him an outright leader. The deadly saga officially reached closure when Flowers' convictions were upheld on appeal in 2002. A federal appeals court acknowledged procedural missteps, but declared that the volume of solid evidence, from wiretaps to phone records, left no doubt about his crimes. Even a one-year reduction in his sentence due to technical sentencing issues did little to change his fate. Anthony "Ant" Flowers stands as a symbol of Oakland's darkest chapter, the man who rose from a schoolyard dealer to a central figure in one of the city's deadliest gang wars. His brutal ascent and eventual fall marked the end of a two-decade era defined by kingpin violence, and perhaps the emergence of something quieter, but no less damaging. Anthony "Ant" Flowers' life is a cautionary tale of ambition unbound, communities terrorized, and the steep, often unforgiving price paid by those who seek power on the streets. As Oakland rebuilds, his legacy lingers, a stark reminder to choose another path. The life of Daryl "Lil D" Reed. In East Oakland in the turbulent mid-1980s, a young hustler ascended not by fame or title, but by sheer ambition, grind, and street savvy. They called him Lil D. His real name was Daryl Lamar Reed, a name that would become both feared and revered across the Bay Area. As a kid, Reed, his small frame earning him the nickname Lil D, already navigated the neighborhood like someone twice his age. He hustled soda at Raiders games, bluntly scalped tickets, and sharpened an instinct for opportunity. These weren't just small-time schemes. They were the training ground for a future empire. By his teens, he was no longer a street scamp, but a precision operator. Unlike others, Reed adopted a disciplined method. He never used the drugs he sold. He ran his territory like a businessman. No wasted product, no unnecessary violence. "Nobody got murdered on that street when I started running it," he wrote later. "It wasn't mere hustling. It became an empire." By age 20, Daryl Reed was known as the Crack King of Oakland. His operation, Lil D Incorporated, stretched from east to west Oakland, even touching the broader Bay Area. At one point, he threw a black-tie birthday party at Golden Gate Fields, reportedly attended by 3,000 people and MC Hammer himself. It was at once an exclamation and a sign, a moment of glamour before the inevitable crash. But the court of law moved steadily. Weeks after that extravagant celebration, federal agents descended on his Adams Point apartment. There, they found one of the largest crack cocaine busts of the era, over 30 pounds of crack and 16 pounds of powder, estimated at $3 million. Reed was arrested red-handed, and the glare of the street legend shifted to that of a convict. Sentenced under the harsh federal guidelines of the time, he received a 35-year prison term with no parole. The fallout of the crack epidemic and punitive sentencing left many like Reed behind bars for crimes that, under later laws, would have resulted in much shorter time. But prison didn't dull Reed's voice. It clarified it. From behind bars, he began to reflect and repent. He authored a memoir titled Wait, a candid chronicle of mistakes made and lessons earned. He spoke with candor. "To anybody who thinks that I lived a great life, it was not worth decades of my freedom," he wrote. His words carried the quiet power of regret, married to clarity. He also became a mentor, delivering calls to Oakland's youth through the urban peace movement's Silence the Violence events, spreading wisdom from experience, living proof of the cost of street fame. Then, in 2016, a turning point. President Barack Obama commuted his sentence, granting Reed clemency after 26 years behind bars. The Crack King was no longer a prisoner. He became a free man. His mother's joy was palpable, his son's pride evident, and the community, for all its scars, listened. Now, Lil D stands as both cautionary tale and beacon of redemption. His journey captures the complexities of Oakland's streets, ambition, loss, and the slow, imperfect path toward redemption. The man who once ran an empire is now investing in futures. his own and others. Redemption isn't a moment, it's a lifelong commitment. Daryl Lil D. Reed's story is not just a narrative of crime, but of possibility, interrupted and regained. In the echoes of his rise and fall lies a message. You can always choose a new path, no matter how dark the road once was. Emmanuel Lacy from Oakland, California, a figure whose story weaves together athletics, ambition, street power, and the consequences of unchecked influence. In the heart of East Oakland, where the hum of freeway traffic meets the rhythm of community life, one name echoed in both whispers and headlines: Emmanuel Lacy. Born and raised in the city's tough neighborhoods, Lacy emerged not just as a familiar face, but as a symbol of ambition turned dark. On the wrestling mats of Fremont High, he was a star, crafted by determination and raw talent, a rising athlete with dreams anchored in discipline and triumph. From there, the path seemed destined for glory. But ambition can mutate, evolving under pressure, opportunity, and expectation. Lacy traded the triumphs of sport for a different kind of power, commanding respect through fear and financial gain. By the late 1980s, he'd transformed into one of Oakland's most formidable cocaine kingpins. His influence among rival street networks, his ties to Anthony Ant Flowers, and their shared reign of intimidation shaped a violent chapter in the city's history. The violence ruled the streets, weeks of turmoil, drive-by shootings, and lives cut short. The turf war with Timothy Blewett's organization escalated into a bloody conflict as both sides fought for dominance over the drug trade. But the streets have rules, and law enforcement had plans. In a sweeping takedown on August 31st, 1994, agents arrested 46 members connected to Lacy's operation. While the net closed tight, Lacy slipped away. Gone, but not forgotten. His disappearance became legend. Then, in a twist that captured national attention, agents tracked him to Denver. There, outside Coors Field before a baseball game, Emmanuel Lacy was arrested. Scalper caught in the open, ending his fugitive run. Court dockets revealed the legal storm that followed, a sweeping 25-count indictment for drug trafficking, conspiracy, and racketeering laid at his feet. The federal case exposed a structured criminal enterprise, Lacy's network spanning residences and coded communications, its tentacles reaching far beyond the streets. Looking back now, it's hard not to wonder, what drove Emmanuel Lacy from wrestling star to cartel boss? Was it a hunger for control, the seductive promise of money, or the harsh reality of limited opportunities? Then there's the human toll. Lives ended, families fractured, neighborhoods scarred. East Oakland bore the burden, fear on the streets, grief in homes, and the slow climb towards healing that still plays out today. The legal system attempted to answer back. While some RICO charges were dismissed, the Ninth Circuit ruling that the indictment lacked sufficient structural detail, it did not erase the damage done nor the lives disturbed. Today, Oakland stands changed. The era of large-scale street syndicates is over, replaced by smaller, fragmented dealers. But the lessons endure. Emmanuel Lacy's story is a cautionary tale of talent diverted, ambition twisted, and community caught in the crossfire. In the city he called home, Lacy's name remains part of the narrative, a stark reminder that greatness and destruction can stem from the same root. The question echoes, how many more lives will follow the same path before the cycle breaks? Felix the Cat Mitchell, emblematic of the larger-than-life figure whose story is deeply woven into Oakland's history. In the unforgiving streets of East Oakland, where opportunities were scarce and survival sharpens resolve, grew Felix Wayne Mitchell, Jr., better known by the name he would make infamous, Felix the Cat. Born August 23, 1954, in the heart of the San Antonio Village projects, Mitchell dropped out of high school and steered his ambition into something far darker than most imagined. By his mid-20s, Felix had transformed the '69 mob, also called My Other Brother, or simply the Mob, into a sprawling heroin empire. It stretched across the Bay Area and beyond into Los Angeles and Detroit, generating staggering revenue, up to $5 million annually, and controlling the streets with a ruthless efficiency unseen before. Felix Mitchell wasn't just a crime boss, he was a showman. Flamboyant taste was his signature: European cars, fine jewelry, high-style parties. He cultivated charisma among the community in paradoxical ways, donating toys to kids, attending church, pushing an image of generosity while ruling through fear. This duality made him for many a folk hero, while to others a parasite feeding on the community he claimed to uplift. Yet behind the veneer of generosity lay a brutal underworld. Mitchell orchestrated drive-by shootings and cunning drug drops, reportedly using drainpipes from rooftops, and employed children as lookouts. The streets knew his wrath, and few dared to challenge him. Federal law enforcement took notice. An 8-week trial culminated in 1985 in a life sentence without parole, handed down by a federal judge who described his reign as a reign of terror. Incarcerated at Leavenworth, his empire fell apart, but the impact was only beginning. On August 21, 1986, Mitchell was fatally stabbed by a fellow inmate. His death illustrated the violent world he helped build, and how even inside prison walls, there was no sanctuary for such men. But if his life was dramatic, his funeral was legendary. A horse-drawn glass carriage bearing his bronze casket traversed the streets of East Oakland, flanked by up to 14 Rolls-Royces and limousines. Thousands lined the route in awe as Huey P. Newton, co-founder of the Black Panther Party, attended. The spectacle was so immense that some remarked, it was like Martin Luther King had died. Yet the city's leaders recoiled, worried that the ostentatious tribute glorified criminal enterprise and sent dangerous messages to impressionable youth. Experts observed what came to be known as the Felix Mitchell paradox. With his grip broken, Oakland's drug trade fragmented. Prices dropped, violence escalated, and smaller gangs vied for dominance, underscoring that removing a kingpin doesn't end the drug trade, it often ignites chaos. Felix the Cat. Mitchell's legacy is one of contradictions: a savvy entrepreneur cloaked in criminality, a feared kingpin with a veneer of community patronage. He showed ingenuity, audacity, and the cost of unchecked ambition. His story played out like a tragedy of redemption or a cautionary tale of power untempered by conscience. Felix Mitchell's life is not just a crime epic. It's a cautionary chronicle of how the void left by systemic neglect can birth legends, monsters, and a legacy that lingers far beyond a headline or a brass carriage riding through city streets.